Okay, it's film class, week 11, part 1. Persona. So, go watch Persona. Go watch Persona, the Ingmar Bergman film from 1966, and come back here. Uh, ooh. So I teach Shakespeare class, and I teach this class, the old movies class. One time though, I made this terrible mistake, and I asked my Shakespeare, because with Shakespeare class, Shakespeare plays there's movies of them, right? So I asked my students, I would play movies for my Shakespeare movies for my students in class, and they really enjoyed that. It's like fun. You get to watch sexy actors murdering each other, and you know. Um, but one time, I made the mistake of trying to show my Shakespeare class a Shakespeare movie that was an old black and white movie, like a quite old one from the 40s, like Double Indemnity era. They didn't like it. I think part of the problem is I think I can take students from where they are and try to get some of them to get into Shakespeare, and I can take students from where they are and I can get some of them to try to get into old movies. But but with this Shakespeare movie that I showed my students, which was Orson Welles' Macbeth, by the way, a great movie. By a major director. But it was too much because I was asking them both to like Shakespeare, and I was asking them to both deal with Shakespeare and deal with old movies. There's something similar with Persona, which is that it's hard enough to ask students to watch black and white movies. It's a whole other thing to ask them to watch black and white movies that are translated from it's translated. So it's I realize I'm asking a lot. On the plus side, Persona is by far the shortest movie that we watch all semester. It is like under 90 minutes. It may be like 81 minutes or 86 minutes. It's a real short. It's not a long film, although it may feel a little long because it's also the most difficult. 2001 is difficult, but it's difficult because I think the reason students find it difficult is because they find it dull. And the reason they find it dull is for the same reason they find an art museum dull, which is that there's sort of, or the symphony, like there's pretty music playing and there are beautiful images, but like that's it for long stretches. That's all you get. Whereas there's no there's no sex, there's no violence, there's no uh, there's no ticking clock. That's something that gets people excited. Sex, violence, and something that has to be done soon, racing to beat the clock, that kind of thing. Um, so, and that was what made 2001 hard. But Persona is hard in a whole other way. Persona is hard in the way that like reading poetry is hard. It's like a very difficult. It's confusing, like aggressively confusing. And unlike David Lynch, it doesn't have as much of the I don't know, the silly stuff, I guess, the fun stuff. It's hard, but it's short, but it's tough. So anyway, but I do want to do it. I like to push students. I like to give you a hard time, and we're 11 weeks in, and I think it's time to push you guys a little bit harder as we head into sort of the home stretch. So this is going to be so we're talking about Persona now. So here we go. Let's just do it. For starters, let's talk about that title. Persona is a really important title. Many of my students know the word Persona. There's apparently a video game called Persona. I don't really know what it is. I don't think it's very connected to the movie Persona. Persona is an interesting word for starters. It means mask. Persona is a mask. But you'll notice, you probably can tell this yourself, the word persona looks an awful lot like the word person. So there's a link between the two. A persona is a mask that looks like a person. And I think if you follow the word back enough, the word persona comes first. I think persona is like the image that you present to the world. Your persona. You might want to think about if you put on a little bit of an act when you go in for a job interview, if you put a little bit of an act when you go over to your grandma's house, it's like not who you really are, but it's like a version of yourself. That's a persona. It's not quite the same thing as lying. It's not just like, or could be, I guess. I mean, you could use that, but you'd probably use a stronger word than persona to describe that. Persona is it's like still kind of a version of you, but it's also a performance. It's the way in which your actual life is often a performance. The best example of persona in the modern day for my students to think about, and it comes from the mask that an actor would wear on the stage. And the word person derives, I think, from the word persona. which is interesting to think about. You think a person as being who you really are, and the mask as being who you pretend to be. So obviously you would first be a person, and then you would put on a mask. But it turns out, I think, that the word person actually comes from persona, which, so the idea is first, the pretending comes first. That's the fundamental bit. And then personhood. I don't know, it's complicated. The thing that I would draw your attention to with the best example of a persona in modern day America is, and all of you know this, is social media. When you are on Facebook, when you are on Instagram, when you are on Twitter, when you are on Tumblr, nobody uses Tumblr anymore. TikTok, I have no idea. But you're doing a version of yourself. It's you. It's definitely you. But it's a version of yourself. Many of you know this experience where you might take 100 pictures of yourself, but you only put one on Instagram. It's the best looking one. And then people on Instagram, and they're like, oh shit, this is a really good looking person. But like, that's not really what you look like. It's kind of what you look like. It's based off what you look like. It's you at your most flattering, you at your maximum best look. And you've done makeup, and you've done lighting angles, and you got the angles just right, and you took the picture from up here, and so like, but it's you, but it's like a version of you. It's like a mask that you put out to the world. I had this experience a couple of years ago. As you can tell from these videos, I'm like a pretty happy person. And 5 years ago, I got hit by a car, and I had my shoulder broken and dislocated, and I was in the hospital, and it was a really terrible, terrible thing. And I put on, but now my sister got me these Wolverine claws that, like, I guess you guys know I really like the X-Men, right? So I got these Wolverine claws, and I took a picture of myself when I was healing, because I was like healing up from my my surgery, and I took a picture of myself wearing blue jeans and a tank top with like the Wolverine claws, and I was trying to like look sort of like Wolverine, even though I don't have any hair, but I'm short like Wolverine because he's my height. He's 5'3". You don't know how tall I am. These are videos. Anyway, the point is that I was joking around about being Wolverine, and then a friend of mine at BMCC, whose husband, you may even know who this is. Her husband, Jim Tolan, died of cancer. And if you're writing a lit major, the Jim Tolan Writing Awards is named after my friend Jim, who died. But his wife, Holly, wrote me, and she was like, how are you in such a good mood? Like, because I think she was struggling with her husband, who was, very sick, and trying to be happy. And then she sees me on Facebook, like, bopping around and being crazy. And she was like, how do you stay happy when things are so terrible? And I was like, I'm not happy. I'm fucking so sad right now. I'm crying all the time. I miss my bicycle, But, like, I put out I'm not going to say it on Facebook. I don't get on Facebook and be like, I'm so sad, because nobody wants to fucking hear it, because everybody has their own goddamn problems. They don't want to hear about yours. So I try to be pretty happy on social media, but it's a persona, right? It's social media it's a version of yourself. And I was happy when I took the photograph, but it's not representative of my whole life. It's just like a little sliver that I carefully chose to show the world. So anyway, that's persona. So you should think about that. It's a really important word and an important concept, the self that you present to the world that is sort of you and sort of not, because it's going to follow. It's sort of a key to thinking about what the hell this goddamn movie is about. If you've seen it, I hope you've seen it. It's a very, very difficult film. The most difficult part of the film is the first like 6 or 7 minutes. I hope, and many of you, I hope you didn't turn it off. It's fucking hard. The first 7 minutes are hard. A lot of crazy shit is thrown on screen. First of all, there's a flame. You may remember David Lynch's obsession with fire in both Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, but there's a flame. There's the projector starts up. The film projector starts up. And you see old film, but you see like old cartoons that are very silly. There's a spider, there's a lamb being sacrificed, maybe his eyes getting gouged out, a nail goes into a palm like on Jesus, there are trees, there's a fence, there's snow, there's a mouth, there's an old woman, there's a penis, there's an erect penis, which is like one of the only things you will not see in mainstream film. It's like one of the markers of pornography. Occasionally a movie will show a penis, but an erect penis is the marker of porn. And there's just like a split-second erect penis. And by the way, if you know Fight Club, I guarantee you, the joke in Fight Club about Tyler Durden putting erect penises for a split second into kids' movies is 100%. Persona is surely where that idea comes from. Okay, anyway, I've rambled on enough for this. I'll pick it up in the next video. All right.